Hi, Andrew with Evermore Studio. I made another Light Up pop-up card for the 2025 Light Up Pop-Up-tober event Chibitronics organized with 5 a.m. Pop-Up. My prompt this year was Relic. While there are some obvious comic interpretations, I went with an abstract design. A pop-up pyramid is not exactly novel, but this was an opportunity to play with the switch mechanism and try some embellishment techniques. I started by prototyping a very simplified mechanical design in plain cardstock in order to make sure I had a feel for how it would work. I got what I expected on the first try and went on to the embellishing. In Inkscape, I added some curvy organic cutouts to the faces. The laser made quick work of cutting and scoring the design in this very heavy 141-pound white cover stock. At that weight, it was able to stand up to being spray painted with metallic copper. I carefully broke each of the scored fold lines across the edge of this ruler and folded them. Masking with a little bit of washi tape keeps the tab that connects the final two sides of the pyramid clean for gluing. The inside remains unpainted so it won't interfere with gluing on the interior panels and for optimal internal light reflection. I remembered having some diffraction grating material as a kid and thought that might make for an interesting alternative to a simple diffuser. I was able to source a small, inexpensive roll. Since I wasn't exactly sure what it was made of, I used the plotting cutter to cut my triangular panels for the inside faces of the pyramid. There were several experiments to find a good way of attaching the panels. I settled on using Super 77 spray adhesive to coat the inside of the pyramid. After putting the diffraction grating panels in place, I glued in heavy cotton thread for the 3 points where it will mount to the base card. I added a layer of quick-dry PVA glue over each thread to keep them secure. I let that cure until there were no exposed tacky surfaces. The quick-drying PVA glue is perfect for final assembly of the pyramid. My needle nose tweezers made a great clamp to hold it while it dried. Base card is 3 layers and uses the extra Z dimension for the switching mechanism. The middle layer is one piece scored across the width to create the center hinge fold for the card. It has a cutout to make a pocket for the flat battery, and cutouts for very thin magnets and to pass the conductive fabric tape through to the back side. I scored an outline of the LED circuit sticker to ensure perfect placement. The bottom layer is 2 panels, with the separation offset from the central fold by enough to let the top surface of the larger panel overlap the circuit side of the bottom of the middle panel. This will make more sense as you see the circuit assembled. The larger panel also has cutouts for the thin magnets which will line up with those on the middle layer to hold the switch closed when in position. The top layer is 2 panels matched to the fold on the middle layer. They're each a tiny bit shorter, by about twice the thickness of the cardstock, to allow space for the hinge on the middle layer to operate freely. There's a cutout around where the circuit sticker from the middle layer is to allow the light through. There are also tiny holes where 2 of the mounting threads for the pyramid go through. The other thread attaches along the hinge fold, and I engraved a tiny mark on one of the panels to indicate where that will be. Again, the laser made quick work of cutting all the pieces of the 3-layer base card. To start, I attached the short side of the bottom layer to the underside of the middle layer. I used my cold laminator to apply permanent adhesive to that piece. I don't want the battery permanently stuck in place, so I temporarily attached the cutout from the middle layer to the bottom piece with tape to mask it off. A simple alignment tool I made a while back came in handy for the glue-ups. This is just a right angle attached to a flat base piece. I can align the corners and 2 edges of the pieces before the glue makes contact. The alignment board is a little hard to see in the video because I made it from clear acrylic to allow backlighting for some uses. The white heartbeat LED circuit sticker goes on aligned with the placement outline I engraved. I built the positive side of the circuit first. The switch goes in the positive leg of the circuit, so it's a little more complicated. The first strip of conductive fabric goes from the positive terminal of the circuit sticker along the side of the hinge fold, then through the slot and back around on the underside of the card. One of the little thin square magnets goes into the hole I cut for it. The magnets are an almost unnoticeable amount thicker than the cardstock, so they will be mostly flush with the surface. I put a piece of blue washi tape over it to help keep it in place and to insulate it from the conductive fabric tape, though that probably doesn't matter much. Here is our flat battery so we can start attaching it to the circuit. The other leg goes from the positive terminal of the battery through the slot, then along the hinge fold on the bottom of the card. The negative trace can go directly between the battery and the negative terminal of the circuit sticker. Again, I added a magnet behind the other leg of the positive trace. Next, I attach the other bottom layer panel with the permanent adhesive. This panel gets a long strip of conductive fabric tape. When the card is open, that edge with the conductive tape will simultaneously touch the two positive traces from the middle layer, bridging them to complete the circuit. This panel also gets magnets in the appropriate holes. These line up exactly with the magnets we placed in the middle layer, with the magnets' polarity set to attract each other. This will provide some extra force to keep the switch mechanism closed when the card is open. There's probably a more elegant way to do this, and it may not even be necessary, but I put a strip of the blue washi tape over the opposite side to cover the magnets and keep them in place. A thin strip of paper can be inserted into the switch mechanism to disable it so that I'm not burning the battery while I work on the rest of the card. I tacked the end of the battery down with some white washi tape to make sure it doesn't move around while I finish the card. After applying permanent adhesive to the first of the top layer panels, one of the threads from the pyramid goes through the appropriate hole using a heavy blunt needle. The thread that goes on the hinge fold gets tacked to the back of this panel too. I used the mark I etched on the card to get it in the right spot. Once those threads are taut, I use the acrylic alignment board to attach the top panel to the middle layer. The final panel gets coated with repositionable adhesive. That should make it possible to change the battery in the future without entirely destroying the card. The last mounting thread goes through the hole and the panel is aligned and attached. I trim off the excess mounting thread and the card is finished. I think this is a good improvement of my 180-degree open card switch mechanism. The conductive fabric tape seems to be more reliable than the copper tape for this, and the tiny magnets provide just enough extra pinch to keep the circuit reliably closed while not making the card fiddly to open and close. The diffraction grating creates a neat effect and adds some extra color. I'm ruling that a successful experiment too. I hope this was all clear, interesting, and entertaining. Your comments and questions are welcome.